tailor this conversation with you, for you. And so before we dive in, I just wanted to introduce, our panel. Really excited that you are here for our first webinar with Stripe Community Builders. We have an expert panel and a very diverse panel to kick off the first Stripe Community Builders for restaurants. And I'll tell you more about the Stripe Community Builders in a moment. Our panel is, we're so excited, Joseph Zala. He is the author of Quiet Killers. It's a new book that's coming out March 2nd, I believe. And it's about what's sabotaging your restaurant's brand's growth and how to stop it. Joseph is also the vice president and partner at 3Al Agency. And we have from Stripe, Lawrence and Tim. He is the senior designer and the part of the AI innovation team at Stripe. So lots of expertise around AI here. And then we have Chris O'Connor, CEO and co-founder at Moe AI. And I am Jessica Valenzuela, your host today. I'm the Stripe community builder and also the chief customer officer at Moe AI and co-founder at Moe AI. The reason why I joined the Stripe community builders is I love bringing together, builders like ourselves, Joseph and Lawrence, to be and experts who can really help and who are always working to help restaurants and restaurant operators succeed. And so thank you for joining us and thank you for being here for our first webinar and event. We will be having in-person events too in the future. So hopefully we'll be hosting that locally at your communities. And a few housekeeping notes before we get started. We're recording this session so we can, you can share it with your peers, with your team if you'd like. You can submit your questions via the chat. We'll address them during the Q&A. We have a dedicated Q&A at the end of the session. And if you have any reactions, resources, and feel free to connect with the fellow attendees. The chat is open so you can connect with the attendees. So let's, dive in. The panelists, Joseph, Lawrence, and Chris, how about we start with quick intros about yourself, and then after the intros, we'll dive into the conversation that the four things that we've seen stop AI and technology implementations called for independent and multi-location restaurants, framing that around the four gaps: expectations, data, people, and how to measure success. And that's the first part of the panel. Joseph?
Amazing. Yeah, so some introduction, I guess. I'm Joseph Zala, and as Jessica said, I am a partner and vice president at 3L. At 3L, we build custom products for restaurant brands specifically. We do color outside that line a little bit, but that's our main focus and expertise. And what that means to us is taking multiple systems and integrating them into a unified experience, and thereby realizing notable lifts in sales and other valuable metrics. And what we've seen so far, because our finger is on the pulse of restaurant tech, on-prem, off-prem, and of course digital, is a lot of adoption and misadoption of AI, as well as misunderstanding expectations. So we sit as partners consultatively at the table, with our clients and to the industry to help navigate this wonderful but whiplash level speed of AI adoption.
Lawrence, thanks. Joseph?
Hi, everyone. Lawrence here. I'm a senior designer at Stripe, focusing heavily on AI integration and AI implementation. I have particular interests in like the restaurant and hospitality industry, with family often working in this space. So had my own explorations in how AI works well and not well in the restaurant industry. And as you can imagine, everything is moving so quickly. So excited to be here and kind of collaborate with our fellow panelists here.
Awesome. Thanks, Lawrence. Chris?
You're on mute, Chris.
Thank you. It's a little easier to have a conversation when I'm not on mute. So, Chris O'Connor, I'm the CEO and founder of Moi AI. And in a nutshell, Moi is a marketing AI solution that allows restaurant and hospitality owners to right-size their marketing team and figure out exactly how to augment that marketing team with a marketing stack that can automate many of the steps that you're doing today. I've spent the last 8 years in the restaurant hospitality business, mainly on the sort of ordering point of sale pipeline, customer intelligence pipeline. And in this panel, I both bring that experience into the conversation, but also I'm also a small business owner myself, navigating a variety of AI capabilities and solutions to get Moe operating as a company and understand revenue and customer support, things like that. And so I also have my own perspective of how I myself am trying to make sense of what big AI means, little AI means, and where it fits, and how to use it efficiently and not go down kind of the wrong path, spinning my wheels.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So just before we dive in, you know, the guests on our panel, on our in our webinar are, multi-location restaurants, independent restaurants. We have someone from IVCBA, shout out to the Incline Business Association, who's here, who represents a lot of small businesses too. So people from, the East Coast and West Coast, and I believe we have some people from Midwest as well. So, different local markets. And so I think we'll be able to share a lot in terms of your personal experiences in what the restaurants have taught us in implementing these AI solutions in the conversations that you've been having. And so let's dive a little into the first framework, like how do we set expectations, and what do operators think about AI in terms of what it really does. And it can it can cover marketing, operations, guest experiences, based on the attendees that we have here. I believe is from across, would be interested in hearing your point of view. So Joseph, would you like to kick it off?
Yeah, of course. I make the joke that the worst drinking game that you can play at conferences right now is to take a drink every time someone says AI, and that is not going away anytime soon. I think we're moving at really, really, really fast speeds. And one thing that the restaurant industry specifically has been, I think it's been a superpower as well as a potential weakness at times, is the rate of adoption. So I think we're still going to say it, but the pandemic caught the industry in a bit of little bit of a hair in the tortoise and hare scenario, in that we were taking a nap on technology. We thought people weren't going to order a hamburger and have it delivered to their house. So what you saw during the pandemic as a need to survive was a rapid adoption, and with that came a lot of just clunking things together because you heard from someone that it worked well. I think there were learnings from that, and that we can't sleep on new technology. But at the same time, that hesitance and that discernment still is a strong muscle that I think in this case will benefit greatly. Um, so what restaurants are teaching us right now is that there's excitement around AI, but that term is those two letters are huge, and they really cover so many facets of the business. The skepticism and discernment usually comes around, can we trust what AI is telling us? If it's agentic, I think that worry gets a bit stronger, even though agentic AI is something that I think is going to revolutionize and speed up a lot of the issues that the industry sees. Um, but at least at the base level, I think what we're seeing is siloed use of AI and siloed perspectives on it. So marketing has their own perspectives on where it can be used, whether it's like a system like Moe that's more advanced, or if it's even simple, like getting rapid copywriting done with a large language model. Internally, we're seeing a lot of use across the back of house, how it communicates from digital through physical, drive-through as well. But I think there's a lot more skepticism there because the risk of damaging and experience is so much higher when it comes to delivering the food in real life. So I think the net there is trying to be really smart, not jumping into it just because it's hot and top of mind, and just being really prescriptive internally as to what we intend to use and how we intend to use it and how we intend to measure the success.
That's great. I do have a follow-up question. In terms of as you're having these conversations from independent brands, restaurant brands to multi-locations, like what's the most common thing that operators are, what are their expectations, whether it's implementing an entire system, like you said, digital systems that speak with kitchen to the front of the house. Like how far is it off that, once they actually dive in, like what does it look like 90 days and what are their expectations around that? Most common ones.
Yeah, a lot of it's really just dipping the toes in to see, I think, certain components. I haven't really heard a lot of like massive overhaul of full integration of AI across the ecosystem just yet. I think there's excitement around it, but again, back to the skepticism, and I think rightfully so. So I think a lot of brands are figuring out unique ways of using AI. So, for instance, I know of a brand that is using AI. They're a small multi-unit to essentially calculate the time to boil pasta based on the local weather mixed with the type of pasta mixed with the current temperature of the water. So I think these very complex problems, it's a microcosm for them. It's like this is one moment, but it's super powerful to increase the consistency of product that's put out. Where I haven't seen that is exploding that into dashboards where you can do more predictiveness and start to, permeate that through the rest of the ecosystem on-prem. From marketing, I think AI is where marketing is proving themselves to be a lot more pioneers. Maybe it's because the perceived risk of failure doesn't have as much of an impact as something like preparing food, delivering customer service well, and so on and so forth. That's not to say it's not important. It's just in the general scheme of things, if an ad campaign doesn't go right, well the first time, you can adjust, pivot, and not worry too much about a negative customer experience. And I think in those ways, we're seeing a lot of adoption of copywriting, understanding data. I
Mm-hmm.
think for even up until this moment, we were all running around saying, "I need the data, I need the data, I need the data." But then we get the data and no one knows what to do with it. No one knows how to read it or excavate the story that we're trying to learn to make that data actionable. And so I think AI is really helping there in parsing multiple sources of data into clear, actionable outputs for marketing teams.
That's actually a great segue to Chris. When it comes to data marketing, the storytelling, how do you do all that? Chris, in terms of building Moe and as you're speaking and working with customers, you know, where do you spend the most time, resetting expectations and then actually recalibrating Moe itself, since Moe is in early access private beta today?
Sure. Yeah, so Moe is a not to focus too much on just the product that we bring to bear, but Moe is a an end-to-end marketing platform that allows businesses to understand the drivers behind their marketing programs and goals and build their marketing content and calendar. I think the biggest area that we interact with owners and operators is helping them to distill kind of a fire hose of data, both sort of public unstructured data around what competitors are doing or around um, what types of events are going on in the location or like what types of visitors that they have in their area, and really cutting through that chafe to get to the key or core nuggets that can allow them to make intelligent marketing decisions. So there are kind of two aspects, I think, to AI. One is allowing you to synthesize a very concise, sort of summary or analysis of a lot of data, and a lot of data that could be locked up in your systems today, but could also just be out there where customers and people are talking about you. Definitely in terms of like reputation management and reviews and online profile, that sort of thing. So it's synthesizing, it's combining the sort of unstructured, kind of conversations that are going on around your business with the deep and rich structured data that's available within the systems that you're using. And that's easy to say, but it's hard to distill that to something that you can communicate well and understand, and that an owner operator can really look at it and understand. And once you have that sort of those pearls of wisdom, it's easier then to create a flywheel, be it marketing or customer service or supply chain management or back office, whatever the case may be. But to build that repeatable flywheel using sort of lighter AI touches that can learn over time, that can take the approach that you would normally take, understand that, and give you a little bit more insight, but then constantly refine and improve that. And in Moi's case, we focus on marketing, but in other solutions, they may focus on loyalty or on again back of house or even drive-through management. The other components of the business. Does that answer your question, Jess?
Yeah, no, I think that answers my question. I think in terms of there are definitely perspectives, and Lawrence would love to hear your perspective on how, what you're seeing within Stripe, or, how you're looking at, structuring the data layer, and, how do you bring that into bear into designing AI tools, or bringing to bear AI innovation within the Stripe community or Stripe ecosystem?
Sure, I can talk about that for a bit. So we've seen a huge jump in just AI native companies overall. Companies are accelerating faster than ever before, growing faster than ever before. So this is a great time to be an innovator in any industry, in a restaurant or multi-chain. If you're willing to try something new, it's a really great time to try something. And I would say AI does a really good job when you give it a very specific task. So it's important. So to Joseph's point earlier, whether you're focusing on POS or whether you're focusing on back of house or whether you're focusing on customer relations, it's really important to find the right tool for the job. We do have these LLMs that are generalists, like a ChatGPT or a Claude, but we see also other ones that are a little bit more nuanced, like Midjourney for image creation, or Nana Banana, also from Google, that's also image creation. I think what's important for every business owner to do is find out, like, where in your business do you want to optimize? Like, what bottleneck do you really want to focus on? That's question one. Question two is, what data do you have to help process it? Because, if you just give it a vague question, it'll give you a vague answer. But if you give a lot more detail and structure and data points, it'll be able to give you a little bit more of an answer that you're looking for. And I know, at least from my understanding, like some POS systems that are fully integrated into your business use that as a selling point. So if you have like a Toast or a Square, they use your data to do that. But if you don't use that, that's also fine. It just really, really important for any business to keep a clean data set, or as clean as possible data set. So when they're using AI, they're able to get the best insights.
That's great. Thank you. And that actually leads me to, sorry, I was bouncing around slides. The data has been, mentioned a lot here across, the panelists, from Joseph, Lawrence, and Chris, as a crucial part of the whole process when you're thinking about, AI, especially when you're thinking about, how can this be useful for my brand, and growing, whether it's about growing your customers, or it's about creating efficiencies around your profitability and revenue, or even the staffing of the operations. And so the data seems to be a big gap in different industries, and in the restaurant industry, because every restaurant, independent or multi-location, just has such a large stack of systems that they're using. And so when you're speaking to restaurateurs, Chris, I will direct this question to you. Like, what do operators usually assume about their data versus what they find when they actually start looking and using the data?
Sure. And I'll try and catch this in, I think, kind of a focus on what's interesting based on like the state of AI today, both in terms of general frontier language models and those kind of dedicated solutions. So I think the restaurateurs that we work with tend to focus on kind of big D data, help me understand kind of the product, how products and orders intersect with marketing and intersect with kind of driving business, driving revenue, which is itself, sort of requires a lot of analytical power and energy that we now have with AI tools that allows you to make inferences and provide meaningful insights. So there's that big D data, but then there's also the small D data, and oftentimes that small D data is the entry point in AI where an owner has a particular itch that they're trying to scratch that they're solving today with some spreadsheets, where they're trying to simply, I don't know, actually kind of a fun example, Burger King just announced today that they're rolling out a system that will track how often someone says thank you at the counters, and that's what a Big Brother like, because it will literally whisper into like the employee's ear, please say thank you more often. But in terms of just looking at meaningful data, you can imagine not necessarily being that heavy-handed, but trying to express or trying to understand how well your front of house is interacting with the guest, and looking at AI as being an easy to enable lightweight technology that can pull that data together into maybe just kind of, again, the equivalent of a spreadsheet, the equivalent of someone literally sitting at the counter, checking off every time someone says thank you. Instead, it can be a very lightweight review tool that can answer that specific question. And those types of like kind of low hanging fruit, or kind of like a very burning questions that owner operators have, that again they're kind of correlating their own using spreadsheets on their own, are the exact types of opportunities to sort of try out AI in more of a playground sense and more of a sort of a vibe sense, to use kind of how the rest of the world is talking about things, to answer those types of questions. So again, sort of big D data, but then I don't want to, or I want to encourage folks to look at that kind of small D. How do I answer some very specific spreadsheet oriented questions that I have today?
And that's great. But with Lawrence, when you're designing your AI-powered experiences and thinking through like, how do I design this for the most optimal experience for the users? Like, what types of data layers do you think about that would be something that a restaurateur should maybe consider when they're thinking about designing that guest experience for their brand or their restaurant, by market, or just online, since online is a big channel for restaurateurs as well?
Yeah, I think on a more general sense, I would think about what categories are the most important to the business or the end user. So let's say this is e-commerce, you're thinking around variants of product, or colors, sizes. So in a restaurant perspective, it would be like, okay, what are your more basic variables? Like, what are the types of dishes you're selling? Like, what are the days you're selling them? Do you have specials on some days? Do you have specials on others? Like, what are the prices that you're doing? So it's similar how you would be doing price testing for, let's say, a new dish on the menu, or it's kind of like thinking about that from a data perspective. You're thinking about what are all the inputs that help you run your business on a more comprehensive sense, um, and using that to help influence it. For example, you can see like, oh, sales of dish A were down 6% this week. To find out that answer, you would have to find out like what's the price and sales of the dish, what's the dish input specific, and also like what are the dates that they were sold. Things that you're already tracking, but just in an organized and clear format. So the greatest part about, to the little D data point that Chris was mentioning, is this is all things you probably already have, It's just making sure that you have it in a systemic fashion. And that's the first part. Getting your data clean is the first part. And before you even layer an AI tool on top of it, having that is like pretty critical. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to add, I think it would be, AI, as I've been using a number of different tools for my own productivity, it's just like being able to just, instead of having to do 10 steps, like, from instead of having a spreadsheet to having to analyze that in pivot tables, an AI tool that's really magical would be able to take that data seamlessly. Obviously the data needs to be clean, and then be able to give me the answer like, you know, menu item A sells really well with menu item B, and my average order increases whenever this happens. And so which days does that happen? And then how do I market that to the customers who frequently buy this particular combination? Would be just so, I feel that there definitely, that's where AI could really add so much, value. And sorry, let's continue. uh, so let's talk about the native built versus bolted on. And Joseph, since what one of the things that is really a burning question is like, um, when a brand chooses a bolted on solution, it's because, it's the easiest, system to adopt. They can just do it on their own. They don't have to rely on a developer or a long onboarding process. Like who who in the organization, in independent brands, we obviously know it's the owner, right? But if it's multi-location, like who's usually driving these decisions? And then if that system isn't working too well once it's on the floor, like who ends up living with these consequences? And I guess I'm framing this around, this is the people gap, where there's a mismatch of the solution or the system that's being brought in, and it's not the technology itself that's problematic.
Yeah, yeah. So it kind of taps into one of the areas within the restaurant industry that I've noted as a pretty big problem, and one that's only going to get worse if it's not addressed. And that is what I call tech anemia. And so what has happened to date is the IT, the CTO, when you get to the larger scale of things, they end up being, if it's tech, it goes to them. And it's kind of shirked the responsibility of operational leaders and marketing leaders and even financial leaders of starting to develop an understanding, a deep understanding of tech as it pertains to their particular focus. So what ends up happening is tech leaders, because they're bouncing between all the needs of all the departments as well as on-prem setups and troubleshooting and basically all things tech, they don't have enough time to really excavate the needs of that particular department or that particular piece of software, as well as the challenges that they're trying to fix with that. So they start going with their gut. They start looking to comparable concepts, what they've used, because we all talk and they all talk, of course. Um, and you end up with adoption of, hey, my friend over here said this was great, so I'm going to give it a look. And I'm not saying they don't do a good enough job of vetting. I think it just gets to a certain point where it's like, well, I've done my due diligence and this is going to be fine. Um, so I think when it comes to native built versus bolted on, you're gonna have to weigh this out. I think when you come to a independent owner operator who's really in it, who's like just in the business daily, there's not enough time to, I think, really evaluate what's going to be great. My suggestion is to find ways to get the data out of whatever system is in and get it pulled. I think Lawrence, you were kind of mentioning this as well, so I want to plus that up. And then using AI tools, whether it's some of the well-known ones like a Claude that has a deep thinking feature, or ChatGPT, which has a deep thinking feature, to look through all the data you have, if you have it warehouse somewhere, and start to ask it questions that it can answer. with native built AI, you're going to get the cleanest AI integration possible. It's been built with AI as the forefront. So there's always a win there. The issue is you may also deal with a very young system. And if they don't have a plan, if that particular platform doesn't have a plan for continuing to stay up to date on AI, it can quickly get behind, like we've seen with ChatGPT. Quite honestly, I think they got caught sleeping, thinking that they were going to lead the revolution, and it's not looking good. Bolted on, you're seeing a lot of that with legacy systems. Actually, really don't like that word because it downplays their strength.
Hmm.
And so you really need to excavate from those systems. How did they bolt it on? How did they bake it in? So, for instance, I'm very appreciative of PAR. I don't know how many folks use them on the call, but rather than just starting to slap AI on their loyalty offering or AI on their POS offering, they did the hard thing and they just stopped and said, how do we rethink this as if it were AI native? And they took the longer path and the harder path. And I think it's going to pay off very well for them. I know another system that you'd have to be 30 units or more in the QSR space, but Q has jumped ahead and like really excavating and digging into agentic AI and what that means for their unified commerce platform. And so I think it's one part is self-education and starting to understand the questions that you need to ask to be able to excavate how well has AI been implemented. Is it just slapped on or is it really baked in? And then you'll hear this phrase all the time, especially if you hear from me, trust but verify all the time. Because when you are using AI, especially when you're in that single independent owner operator, it's easy just to go with what AI says because you're busy. And that's an understatement. But you have to be able to verify that data and the outputs, at least until you can really start to trust that model better. Um, and then one last thing, what Lawrence, you were kind of saying, and Chris as well. I think for those owner operators, try not to get overwhelmed with art of the possible. I think it's right now focus on where can you get a quick win and start to open up more time elsewhere because AI can save you that time. And I think that really is in getting the data out of where it lives today and using that to ask and answer questions as simple as where am I seeing too much, human resources on staff during the week compared to my sales, compared to my traffic, and you can start to tweak your P&L accordingly. I don't know of a system that's really going to allow you to do that natively right now. Maybe Toast, maybe Square.
Yeah.
But I think the more you can get it out of the system and work with the data yourself, the better it's going to be for two reasons. One, um, you're not getting the biases of that platform if there are any. And two, you're going to learn and you're going to learn how it's parsing and really looking at that data.
Yeah, we should get back to the how to measure success. That's actually our, how we'll close the panel. But and thank you, Joseph, for, that's trust and verify. That's definitely something that, anyone should really include or integrate into their workflow when they're either testing AI or adopting AI as part of their tool sets. Lawrence, one quick question, since you're on the design side, when talking about native built versus bolted on, like what user uh, differences in the user experience that you see and have observed between these two types of tool sets? What does the user experience, and that's different from a native built versus a bolted on in their adoption of AI?
Um, yeah, I can speak a bit to that. In overall, I would say that native built AI systems tend to lead with AI as like the forefront of the experience, whether it be a chat, whether it be AI insights available versus you could say bolted on. I wouldn't you similar challenge on that phrase, but it's more of a feature. So it's like a part in the sidebar. I know, like for example, some car dealerships are like, oh, use a little filter and then it's like powered by AI. That's more of like the bolted on experience
Yeah.
versus a native build is kind of leading with it from the beginning. I think it comes down a bit of preference. to what you believe is like necessary for you at that time. Similar to Joseph's point, it's quick wins first. If you can get a quick win with I would say a native built probably can get you more quick wins faster. Um, but it depends on if the native built is solving the problems that you have identified. So it really comes back to that basic point of like identifying what specific problems you have. Native built platforms tend to also like be a little bit more quick to respond, but to Joseph's point as well, they may have a chance of like struggling to keep up. So it's balancing both, but I think it's worth every business and restaurant owner to evaluate all the options on the table.
Yeah. When you say, let's dig in a little deeper, and we don't have a lot of time, but when you said quick wins, one thing that really comes to mind to me is onboarding. So if you can just speak to the difference between the onboarding process of a native built versus bolted on, um, you know, just maybe spend a, f- a few seconds.
Sure.
That would,
I
yeah.
would say, I mean, if you're saying native build, it's probably like a startup or a smaller company that is like coming up. They probably can onboard you in days to weeks versus like other ones you may need to sign a contract and may go with longer processes. So it also depends on your timeline. I think if you're a single restaurant owner, you could probably move quickly versus like if you have even a few locations, you may want to take your time and your thought process just a little bit more before like signing on. But I think onboarding speed is something that matters to a lot of businesses, and technically smaller businesses can onboard other small businesses faster. And so I think that's the point there.
Great. Thank you. So since we're running, short on time, let's dive into the measurement gap and, how should operators, think about measuring success and, you know, in terms of when they adopt AI and to to help them understand, okay, is this really working? Is this really giving me efficiencies? Is it really effective in terms of, whether it's marketing or whether it's, the guest experience um, or food preparation. Chris, any high level like framework of what restaurant operators should think about?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question maybe a little bit differently than you asked it, because I think operators and restaurateurs have a good, solid understanding of what success means from a business perspective. The challenge is in keeping those success goals in mind as you're being pushed through this AI hype cycle, and as you're dealing with a variety of AI vendors, Moe is one of them, that is demonstrating capabilities and promising, certain results. It's almost like, so we're in a few of us are in the Lake Tahoe area, and it's almost like preparing to go into an avalanche prone area. You want to make sure that you have a plan and that you stick to that plan, and you can reference that plan as you're in the moment and maybe a little bit excited about capability, or maybe being faced with a vendor who's telling you that there are other capabilities that come in the pipe, because those AI goalposts are constantly moving and new capabilities are constantly being evolved. I mean, frankly, 9 months ago, my business was run very differently in terms of how many customer support people we had, how many SEO people we had, how many designers we had. And if I had just said, well, I'm just going to go with a web design tool that says that they're AI oriented and it will work within one specific condition, and wasn't open to the overall measurements of success, I would have lost out on many opportunities. So I think it's really important to have very simple to communicate goals in terms of either understanding your business or definitely in terms of revenue recognition and customer engagement or customer success, those kind of big picture goals, but to then evaluate and be open to looking at how AI can help you meet those goals over time. So I guess success to me is measured ultimately in an owner being able to step back and say, yes, this tool that I'm using is helpful and it's worth either the time, effort, or money that we're spending on it. And that is an evolving process that you always have to keep in mind as you're going through an evaluating tool or being introduced to other products or other AI capabilities.
That's yeah, that's really helpful, Chris. Joseph, in terms of measuring, like what's a vanity metric and what's a metric that actually tells you the implementation is working? Can you give us a real example without, mentioning brands or, you know, things that are
Yeah,
covered by an
sure.
NDA?
Of course, of course. Yeah, I don't know if I believe in the term vanity metrics. I think vanity metrics are usually looked down on as not valuable. What I see with a lot of data points that are seen as vanity is certainly precursors to the big transactional moment. So usually vanity is placed on things that don't have a dollar sign attached to it. I think for independent owner operators, the quickest method of measuring success is time saved, which is of course money. And that can be time saved by the owner. It can be time saved by staff in menial repetitive tasks. Essentially, AI is a way to accelerate your capabilities. And as a result, you should be able to save time and get yourself out of the weeds, quite honestly. As you scale, as your team gets larger, I think measuring success is a shared task, actually, figuring out what does success look like on this. We all know money is the ultimate success metric, and I think increased money and decreased frivolous expenditures are net results of adoption of AI in a very good way. When it comes to creative, from UX to all that, I I want to be simultaneously optimistic and cautionary. The fact is building creative is becoming easier and easier and easier with AI. In Figma, you can build an entire site with a click of a button. Elementor, if you're familiar with that platform, there are all these platforms that are allowing you to use AI to build things. But what I'm starting to see is word of the year, which is slop. And what that really means is if we're all using the same tool to build the same things, eventually we're just creating robots talking to robots. And the creativity, which really is a superpower of differentiation, is lost. So I would say success is saving time, but not at the expense of accuracy or differentiation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And brand, just the brand representation in terms of the creative, the copy, which is part of the creative, the storytelling needs to be very authentic to the brand. And I see a number of tool sets that are attempting to do that. But then there are tool sets that uh, you know sort of promise that, but you still have to put in a lot of effort, it seems like. And so then there's still lost time in that, when you're measuring efficiency there. But yeah, I think these are things that, our restaurant operators, independent business owners should really look out for. So thank you for that. So we don't have, we're running out of time. So let's go into some questions. I see we don't have a lot of we have some questions prepared for the panel. But if there are any questions from the guests, please type it into the chat. Any questions about specific tools. But we'll dive in because we're running out of time. So for and I feel like we've covered this, for operators watching, or listening to the webinar right now, and who will be listening to this webinar after it's out there. Oh, we do have a question. So let me just, Steve. So what are some AI tools that they can use to predict daily sales? So we can name tools that you've come across. I'll start with Lawrence, if you since you're part of
Sure.
the Stripe ecosystem, you probably have seen some tools that have come through. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And on the restaurant side specifically, it would likely be any tool that is integrated into your point of sale. So like I know Toast IQ does this. So if you're a Toast restaurant, Square AI I think also does this as well. Those are the two that come directly top of mind. I know there's this other one called Nori, but it's like an um, all-in-one AI tool management for your entire restaurant. Uh, so I can pass it off to Joseph if you have any top of mind or Chris, but I would say when you're deciding your POS system, and I would do some deep research onto the company and see what kind of how they've integrated AI into it. Because if they are talking about it at all, that would probably be a large selling feature they talk about, whether with a sales rep or on their website. Um, or if you have your current POS system, I would reach out to uh, their customer support or your rep or on their website to see whether they have that functionality because it is becoming more table stakes now in the world.
Joseph, any
Ye-
ideas?
Yeah, yeah. Adding on to that, that would be my go-to as well. I think PAR also has AI baked in now with their Brink product. Um, But again, back to trust and verify, I do like to pull data out and analyze it separately, and you can compare it to what the system is outputting from the native AI. And I think many of the standard AI platforms out there, large language modeling, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, I think does a good job of this as well. But if you can get your data out and get it into those systems and use those systems to analyze too, you have a good verification method. And it may help you actually look at multiple systems outside of just POS. Um, and you can also you start to look at online ordering. I know it does come through the POS still, but I think it might give you a different view. So yeah, I would stick to the main guards before you get too niche. And of course, if it's native in your system, that's going to be probably the purest.
Chris, since I know you've built and worked on something that could potentially be helpful for Steve, are you still
Yes,
there?
yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah, no, I'm thinking because I haven't. So again, I think it's just the Lawrence mentioned the point of sale vendors are now offering those types of capabilities kind of out of the box to some level or other. I'm not extremely familiar with standalone tools. Getting back to my earlier comment, we have seen owner operators and helped owner operators use, kind of like the ChatGPT and Cloud Anthropic tools to start with spreadsheets and build, sort of reusable, quick, kind of vibe coded sales forecasting tools that meet their particular needs. And so, I guess my only comment would be don't be afraid to try out one of the large language model vendors and just point them out of the problem, especially if you have spreadsheets of sales data that you can just start to vibe over the results. Yeah.
I would also recommend if you're with a POS system that has its own ecosystem. Usually there are
Good point.
specific tools that already have the data that you need, where you don't have to do any manual pulling out of your CSV files or data files from the POS system to run it through a large language model, like a ChatGPT or Claude, that as part of that ecosystem, they already have a partner that can basically seamlessly create all your sales and performance data and deliver it directly even to your CRM system. So I would look into, if you're in Toast has a really good ecosystem, as well as Square, Stripe, which is also has a great ecosystem of different tool sets. Uh, and just for to close out, so we have 8 minutes, as 7. So just for the panel, for operators evaluating tools right now, like what questions should they be asking when it's specific to AI? I feel like we've covered this, so this is more of a summary. I'll start with you, Chris.
Oh, I was also looking at some interesting questions
Oh,
that
yeah,
were
yeah.
coming in around tools and around faster OGT for cashiers. I'm not sure if we wanted to take a moment to go over that.
Yeah, 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 please. I just saw another question.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with some general tools and I'll type them into the chat. So in terms of general tools to kind of get your feet wet that require some level of technical expertise that you could play with. There's a kind of a workflow piece that allows you to use AI lightly to stitch together spreadsheets and other things, other sources of information called N8N that I found very valuable in kind of automating these like low-hanging fruit processes within my business. Unfortunately, it does require a little bit of technical expertise. I'm also very partial to uh, Claude's desktop tool and
Cowork.
Claude Cowork. And so Claude Anthropic is taking an approach where they're trying to develop some pretty good skills, which are kind of buckets of like sort of useful guidance on how an LLM can help you do things. And so they do have like some web design skills, some marketing skills, that sort of thing. ChatGPT has gone a little bit different approach where they've opened it up into more of a marketplace, and so I find that the quality isn't quite the same there, but that's just my own personal opinion. But so you mentioned web design, even literally like I've had great success in understanding web design, SEO, some components that we had outsourced just by asking the general tool, but asking it in a very open-ended way. I want to get started with web design, with designing my website. What information would you need to help me, effectively move forward with this? And you're not necessarily going to get amazing results, but it'll at least get you sort of started in understanding, what information you want to provide to an AI platform or an AI tool that can get you to the next step. In terms of then the OJTL or kind of back office or guest interactions, it seems like Joseph. I'm guessing Joseph might have a strong opinion there, or more knowledgeable opinion there.
I have a strong opinion on everything, right? Um,
We all do.
yeah, no,
Sorry.
it's good. I mean, I try to stay away from like blanket statements like this is the end all be all solution because truly every situation is different. And one of the things I mentioned in Quiet Killers, my new book, sorry, plug, is to not look for confirmation bias from larger organizations. It's really unfair to you. It's going to create more than likely a failure strategy, or survivorship bias, I should say. So, just because McDonald's is using it doesn't mean it's going to guarantee your success. And even on a smaller scale, just because that 50 unit brand is using it doesn't mean you're going to be able to use it successful. So with that in mind, I think answering the how can AI be a part of actual guest interactions? Kiosks are a win. I know a lot of these more advanced POS systems like Toast and Square have POS systems. If you're a little bit larger and you're within the Olo ecosystem or ecosystem, they have a great partnership with Byte and Grubber that have fantastic POS or kiosk software. I think as with everything, I see AI more as a mediocrity killer. And so what I mean by that is in creative, if you're just phoning it in, you're going to be able to do the same with AI, really. What we're looking for is to get to parity, but then also go beyond that. AI can get you to parity very quickly. So with kiosk, you can get there very quickly. What comes next? Can you build on top of that? Can you iterate? Can you innovate? That should be your next question. As an independent or a small multi-unit, it's just about getting it there, getting it set up, and learning how to use it. I think by the very nature of doing that, you'll see efficiencies in time spent. Um, but if you're doing kiosks, I think you need to rethink how your people add that human touch that really most of us still want when we're in person. So if there's kiosks, great. Now you have the option of leave me alone, I can do this myself, but you need to provide the option of let me do it for you. Let me interact with you. Let me make this a hospitable experience. Um, on the digital ordering front, selfishly, that's what we build. We do the same thing. It's like, let's get to parity, then let's innovate. And that innovation can be very nuanced. Like there's a brand called Duck Donuts. We built a system for them where you can build an entire box of all customized donuts. A lot of fun, but very complex in making sure that you can make that easy to use to increase those AOVs as well as conversion rates and therefore revenue. So when it comes to 10-minute daily task, I would ask what the task is is it replicable by AI, or can it be at least shortened by AI? And then start to figure out how's that going to affect the team? How can you implement it and train against it?
Great. I think hopefully that answers the question. I think that's a great way to close. A huge thank you to our panelists and our partners, and 3Owl Agency, Stripe, and Moe AI. For the attendees and our guests, we'll send you a really quick survey to complete about this webinar. We'll send you a special discount code for Stripe Atlas. It's very specific for restaurants. If you have a friend who's starting or wanting to open a new business, Stripe Atlas is a great way to get started. Really super easy. So we'll give you a discount code for that. And as restaurant operators, we'd love to give you access to early access to Moe AI. So we'll send you an invite as well. And if today's conversation resonated with you, as Joseph mentioned, his new book is coming out March 2nd, Joseph, on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Is that correct?
Yeah, the ebook is actually available today, and
Okay, it's
the
available
physical book will
So,
be on Monday.
so it's called Quiet Killers, What's Sabotaging Your Restaurant Brand's Growth and How to Stop It. And yeah, and that's a wrap. Thanks again. We'll send you a recording of the webinar as well. Have a great day and be well. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Ciao. Great. Do we stay on?
Yeah, we can. How
Cool.
do
Okay.
I think we're still, I stopped the recording, but we're still on. And I think the
Okay.
attendees are still on. Yeah.